As we gather with family and friends for our summer fun, we have the opportunity to create special occasions. And with this comes special connections. It can be around a fire pit, in the backyard, at the beach, maybe hiking, kayaking, or just sitting and visiting with someone. These special moments are ones we treasure when the winter storms arrive and when we're far away from those we love and cherish. Today we're exploring the power of intention and the attention you have when you create a special gathering, and how you can cultivate enduring love and connection through the gathering and then long afterwards. In this portion of the podcast, I'm here with my sister Charlene. We actually get to sit side by side, which is lovely. We're in the Okanagan Valley this week as I came for a surprise visit, and you might hear the sights and sounds behind of what's happening, but we wanted to do something live and outside today and just capture some of what summer is. We thought it would be timely as an opportunity to talk about the common gathering threads that have kind of weaved through our family over the years, and for us to plant some seeds of opportunity with you, the listener, as to how you might choose to create your own special moments and what you might choose to include. So let's get started. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. This is sponsored by Dance Debut Inc. and the Cape Breton Tea Company. And welcome back, Charlene.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to have you out here with us.
It was lovely to know that I could make the trek, and also it was a great opportunity for us to celebrate too, because we had some new things happening in the family, and so we rose to the occasion.
Yes.
So we'll share some of that as we go forward. So before we begin our conversation, I always like to bring an intention in for the listeners, because as you're listening to these podcasts, they are set up for you to be able to have balance and flow as we go through the conversation, and we're trying to lead you through that. So if there's an idea you have in your mind, we're going to set some intention, and then we're going to bring it into flow. So follow along with us, because it just happens as a part of the podcast. So the first thing is from the Affirmations for the Body and Biofield deck. I cut the deck, and I was surprised by the piece that came up. I always love this picture. So this one has little spheres of joy weaving through it, which I love, which for some people can be the spheres of people who've influenced them in their lives, but it can also be people who've passed before us. And sometimes it's just those bubbles of joy that you need to think about and bring forward. So for those people listening on the podcast, there's a column that kind of goes up the center, and it's got green, yellow, gold. It's very earthy tones to it. And then these white spheres. So this card is representative of cervical 5. So that's, as you're coming down from the skull, it's just about to the base of the neck, but not quite. It's kind of in that arch of the neck. And that bone in there at cervical 5 resonates at the note of G, for anybody who's a musician. In this one, we have the ability to choose. If we do not take the opportunity, we've made our choice, and the decision is ours. So we were just that empowering piece, and how we want to approach our day, and how we want to approach how we're going to celebrate with family and friends as we go forward. Okay. And what I wanted to bring in with the cervical 5 was the ear rub. And this one is great for so many things. When we rub the ear, we have these acupressure points that go all the way around, which reflect on all the other parts of the body. So we can actually engage the entire body by rubbing our ear. So for those people who haven't done it with me before, you can use the same hand or opposite hand, whichever you like. And then you're just going to go and unroll the ear from the top. You're just going to kind of give a little tug on the ear and pull it out to the sides. And if you're listening to the podcast, hopefully I'll be able to give you the right cues for you to be able to follow along. Then we're going to go 3 times with it. So we're going to go back up to the top. We're going to just go a little bit deeper into the ear and just kind of massage out towards that place you unfolded, down to the bottom. And then the third one is going to go a little bit deeper in, and you're just going to give a little tug towards the center of the ear as you pull out. All right. Now we could check to see what the neck feels like and the level of flexibility, which we didn't do. But what I will share with you is this is a great way to calm the vagus nerve. It's a great way to improve your ability to hear takes background noise out, which is lovely. And then you might notice that your ear starts to warm up, so you have more circulation running into those other systems. So let's do the other side. And as we're thinking about cervical 5 and how the neck is functioning, a lot of times in the summer when we're sitting in lawn chairs, which put us at really bad postures, and this gives us an opportunity to actually open up the space for some of those postures we might be taking because of maybe you're lying on the beach and you're in the sand, and or you're playing games and you might make gestures that you don't normally make.
Or a lot of road trip driving.
Road trip, sitting in the car for a long period of time. We did bowling yesterday.
Yes.
Something I haven't done for a very long time. So, yeah, I have one calf muscle that's telling me I used that one more than I did the other. Okay, so now that we have that, I just wanted you to bring that into what it feels like. But if you want to turn your neck and just see what it feels like. And again, we didn't do that little piece before, but this gives us an opportunity to at least expand from there. And I wanted to bring in, we always try to follow with a tea. The reason we do the tea is, yes, I have the tea company, but the second part is we have all of the herbs within the tea. And the herbs help us to bring in the essence of the herbs and support us and lift us up. So energetically, we set our intention, and now we can bring a flow to it by including the herbs to say, hello, I see you, I taste you, and just be with the herbs. So we have been recording 2 podcasts today. So we have the Mission for Change community in our glass, and we did it as a cold blend today. And so we have some lovely blends that come from the garden, which is red raspberry leaf, blackberry leaf, and this, we've got some lavender, some chamomile. This gives us the opportunity to connect with those. So cheers. Ooh, we get to do that in person.
We never do that, yeah.
So if you're listening to the podcast and you had water with you, that's great. And if you're able to make a cup of tea while you're listening, that's also lovely. But that brings us forward with being able to bring some flow because of the choice that we made to add that in there.
It's nice and refreshing in the heat today.
Exactly.
It's nice to make them in a nice tea too.
Yes.
Instead of just thinking of it as a hot tea.
And also with all of the things we've done all week, we've made different blends of switchel. And because I'm in the Okanagan, the apricots, the cherries, and the blueberries are pivotal right now. And so we've been drinking a switchel blend, which has the tea in it, but we've also added apricot, blueberry, ginger. And I have to say that the container that it's been in has been emptied twice. So it was definitely a hit. I mean, the iced tea disappeared, but the switchel disappeared much faster. And anybody listening that wants to know more about switchel, you can find that on capebretontea.ca on the website if you go into stories. And I have the recipe there, but also the value of drinking switchel.
One of the things that you've been talking about a lot is intentions. And so not everyone understands maybe what you're talking about and some of the science behind that. So why don't tell us more about what you're meaning when you say that?
Yeah. So with intention, we can get up in the morning and we can just start our day. And we can go along, however we react to everything that happens to us in the day, and we have an idea of what list we want maybe. But if you didn't have a roadmap to get you to your next destination, you wouldn't know where you were heading. And so intention provides you with the opportunity of stating where you want to go. So it might be a quality. So it could be, I want ease and grace going through the day. Sometimes I'll say something like that. And that could be, I have a lot of bigger challenges that I have to kind of work through the day, but then I can set it up. I want ease and grace while I'm doing all of those activities. So my roadmap then becomes how I want to feel at the end of the day. So a lot of us feel overwhelmed, tired, and inadequate because we didn't finish off the list we made, which usually our list is longer than we ever have time for or resources.
Yes.
So intention has an opportunity for us to know where we're going. And when we know where we're going, the things that we're going to need have the opportunity to come in to join us. And so Lynn McTaggart is one of my favorite people to reflect with. And if you have not listen to any of Lynn McTaggart's blog posts, podcasts, any of those things, she has studied intention for years as a journalist. And she actually thought she was going to debunk intention having any power at all. And in the end, she now runs programs based on intention with what she discovered. But she's able to bring her greatest achievements. I think there's lots of great achievements, but one is bringing together 8 people. And the power of those 8 people all focused on one intention is that intention inevitably comes around in some way. Might not be the way we envision it, but it does come around. And so if you have a chance to look at her work, she brings in a lot of the actual science pieces, but she also has created the science by some of her experiments. And those go around the globe. And I have one favorite interview that she did with Anat Baniel. And Anat is a specialist in movement, which is my passion. And what Anat chatted about in this particular podcast was when she was approaching a person and she had a preconceived idea of the person, or she even just looked at the person and they had a certain color on, or they walked a certain way, you get that sense or that idea and that filter that you use to approach something. And she said, what happens with, especially when we're looking at family and friends and social gatherings, if you know the history of someone, you can bring that with you when you look at them. And
everyone does that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can talk to them a certain way. You'll ask questions a certain way. And if you haven't seen them in, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, maybe they're not going to be the same person you thought they were, but you brought this filter. So then to be able to set up the intention to be open and aware, and then to create whatever's going to come off of that. And I always try to approach it from the wonder, right? Here's where I'm going. I want ease and grace as an example, because that's easy. And then what does that feel like? And as I'm having the conversation with the person, how do I bring about ease and grace in that conversation? So maybe you didn't get along so well the last time that you had an exchange with the person or the gathering you were at. And you bring that into your mind. You're going to you could set up a duplicate thing happening all over again. Or you could set up the way that you're going to ask a question, which is going to get a response back in a certain way. But if you can set up your intention to be open, then all possibilities are on the table. And it can be a really different exchange. And for families and friends, there's a lot of baggage that can come with family and friends.
Really?
What? And that
there's no families that
I don't know.
No.
If it was a perfect family, what would that look like? It wouldn't be any fun.
They'd be on TV.
So if you could be as open and willing to see new possibilities, and all of us are always striving to be the best we can be, and they're also striving to be better. And so when you think about that, if you have an expectation that creates something different, you might put that person back into that spot. And so this gives you the opportunity to maybe not do that. And the last one I'll mention is the Tai Chi, because I'm an avid Tai Chier, and you've been pulled into Tai Chi.
I finally have the opportunity to enjoy Tai Chi.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. And so what happens with Tai Chi is too, when we're doing the set, there's an intention with the set. It starts with the bow, right at the very beginning, and giving thanks to all those people who passed the knowledge forward. And sometimes I think we forget about just bringing that forward. When you say grace at the table or you bless your food, you can create that intention there, but we're not always doing that. And in a fast food world, where you're picking things up on the fly, not taking that same amount of time. And in Tai Chi, we also have the names of our moves. And those names all provide meaning to the move. Yes, you have value when you do the move, but you also have the metaphor of the move. And that starts to create a completely different way of exchanging. So those are the ways that intention could have an influence on your day and how you go forward. Interesting.
Interesting. So I know in the past you've probably had other people that have given you some feedback and some testimonials about how they've got experience and experience from that. Do you want to share some of those with us?
Yeah. There's one is how people approach the day. So those people who have chosen to set an intention at the start of the day and whatever ritual they use to bring it into activation. So I'll say it that way, where they move the energy forward, so it's going to be there. We did it with tea. It could be with a movement, could be with prayers first thing in the morning, or meditation, could be with going for a walk. A lot of people do that, take the dog out for a walk, and they like that nice quiet time. So those people who have been a part of my classes who do that, they're the people that come into my class with such joy. Right? You know, like you can see it on their face, and they're excited to be where they are. And they also come in with this sense of awe and surprise, because they didn't realize how many things they would discover across, as I might see them once a week, maybe. So if I see them once a week, there's a lot that can happen in that week.
Yes.
And when I see them the next week, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. But they also know it because they had that intention of what they were looking for. And they can say, this is what happened, and this is what I accomplished. Or sometimes when we don't have that roadmap, we did a lot of things, and you can say, it was a really busy week. It was so hectic. I'm exhausted because I didn't get enough sleep. Like all those things because you were working so hard to accomplish. And what I find with my students when they come back, there's a significant difference. With those that do several activities with me in a week, it's like it's on a super highway. I guess the best way to describe that, because we're, and I'm not saying everybody has to sign up to do a whole bunch of classes with me in a week, but if you start doing the intentions, the cumulative aspect of it picks up. And those people are doing things they never imagined. And where you might have your bucket list of things you want to do, you've got things that were never anywhere near the bucket that ended up in the bucket. And then also the relationships that came off of that you weren't looking for a new relationship, but all of a sudden you have people with different interests. And so for those people, it is like a super highway. And so for me, when people ask, you know, what do you do to be uplifted all the time? And intention is right at the front of the list.
That's awesome. Very profound.
Yeah.
And exciting. I'm sure it's very rewarding too for you. Like to see that sort of transformation happening for people around you. Especially
when you get people, because I'm in movement. So when you get people that come in, I had someone the other day that was with sciatic nerve pain, as an example. I had 3 actually in the same week. It was like within 3 days. And some of the comments are, oh, I've had it for a long, long time. Or I've had it for the last 3 weeks, but it's okay. I'm going to do whatever. And then when we discover that sciatic nerve pain actually isn't a permanent thing, they think it is. It's a part of getting old, and they accept it. Then it is, because their intention was already set that that's what it was going to be. But sometimes I ask the question, you know, is it the truth? Is it really what's happening? And then when I go through a couple of exercises and the pain's gone, and they're astounded, but their intention had been, I'm going to cope with the day. And for me is, what does the body need in order for that pain signal to disappear? And then it's gone. And that is so rewarding to know that somebody's going to go home and have a really good night's sleep, right? They're not going to be rolling over and uncomfortable.
Yeah, right.
But also they're going to share that story, because they're going to have a friend who's going to have sciatic nerve pain, and that story is going to keep going. So they're also empowered to be able to share it further. Yeah.
And is intention different than goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. A goal, for a lot of people, like I said, the list, we set the list up for the day. Our goal is to finish the list by the end of the day. But many of us we start with a small number of things on the list, but then we start to add bigger things. And then we think that we're going to have all this time in the day, but we're not anticipating interruptions. So that list can get quite long. And your goal could be to finish the list. And then at the end of the day, you didn't finish the list. So then you say, I'm inadequate. I wasn't enough. There's not enough time in my day. Then you start having those cycles kind of run through. So goals can work in that capacity, but you can also have goals where you might be working on a project and you're thinking, today I'd like to solve or create the pathway towards completing the first phase of my project, say.
Right.
And if you leave it open at the end, so it doesn't have an exact time line on it, very often things you didn't anticipate will weave their way in. So goal could be used that way. And then some could be, my goal is to just get the dishes done. And then, you put it at the front of the list, which is great. Because a lot of times it could be there and you're like, oh, those dishes. Yeah, I didn't do them last night. And I have to go water the plants and I've got to talk to so-and-so and I would get to my emails. And then you come around to those dishes again. The dishes are still there. But as soon as you make the dishes your number one goal, there's your road path. You're right on it. Yeah.
So what if people think this is just too much for them, setting their intentions?
Yeah, a lot of people will say that. They don't know how. They don't know how to start. But what I would say would be, look at your week previous. How did it go? What things were left over from the week that you didn't accomplish or that you wanted to solve or anything like that? And write down some of those pieces. And then also look at what kinds of phrases might have come out of your mouth through the week, so that I'm not good enough. There's never enough time. Not enough time is a big one. And
that's on everybody's minds, always.
Always. 4 o'clock rolls around and you look at your workday and you're like, I have 1 hour left. There's no way I'm going to get through all of this. But look at how your week went last week. And then just take one item for the day and say, my intention today is to enjoy today with ease and grace, as an example, or ease and flow. Or I'm going to bring joy to every conversation that I have. Or I'm going to smile to everyone I meet today. That's a really good one because that changes everybody. And then have a look at the end of the day and see, how did the quality change over what you had that previous week? What parts did you like about it? And maybe what could you do better? And then the next day, you'll be able to look at it again. If you write it down, keep a little notebook that's just goals, then you might be able to jot things through the day that you could go back on later and reflect on. And that can be very helpful for making it less of a chore and more of a discovery.
Sticky noted on your mirror?
Sticky noted on the mirror. Yeah, as long as you don't leave all the sticky notes up there, because then you have to go. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my goodness, there's so many sticky notes. Yeah.
And then how do you use the affirmation cards in the podcast to support the intentions?
Yeah. And I know it seems odd when I keep adding them at the front of the podcast for anybody that's not familiar with me and what I do. The thing about using the affirmations is when I cut the deck, I have my intention set and I cut the deck to see what message is going to come back to me. If you go and find the card that you want to work with, you might find the card of something that you're already doing really well. So then there isn't really any growth that happens with that. But if you cut the deck, it sometimes gives you a new way of looking at things. Or like in the case of cervical 5, when I was thinking of the podcast today, I wasn't thinking neck. But it did mean I could bring up some ideas. And those ideas may be what the listener, what you came to hear today. And that gets me out of my head and what I want to deliver and more to what people are needing to hear in the message.
And this one, the idea was about choice, right? Mm-hmm. And that really action or inaction is a choice. That was the message.
Exactly.
And really it's an interesting thing to ponder.
And if we take that back to summer vacations and visiting, and with me being here, it was my niece got engaged And so the first thing,
My daughter.
the first thing that my mom said was, oh, you're going to be here. We're going to throw an engagement party. And all of a sudden, the visit went from, one, we were excited that I could visit, but two, it became not about me visiting, which a lot of times it can be, because the favorite foods come out. Mom tries to make me my favorite things. And we go to things that are things that I haven't seen yet that you want me to see. But this shifted the focus around to Jessica and to her lovely partner. And when we brought that together, they became the center focus.
Yes.
And then all the excitement around what we did after that.
Yeah. And getting, what are we going to do and what games can we set up? And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as a social gathering, we do get together a lot. And we play a lot of games.
Yes.
And we did play games, but we played new games. And for poor Ben, who doesn't know the family very well, it was a great way for him to get to know us a little bit better, because it wasn't, and because we're very competitive at crib or ticket to ride, but it was another way for him to engage with us. And the way we set up the questions too for the games, we were learning more about them, and we were learning more about each other as we were playing that through. And so that intention that we have as a family to always try to celebrate and bring forward some joyous time that all of us can be there together with always makes a difference.
Yeah, it was lots of fun. Absolutely. So if people wanted to look at the decks of cards themselves, how would they do that?
If you go to dancedebut.com into the shop, the affirmations for the body and biofield deck is actually 4 decks in one. And so I'm just going to hold it up so you can see the front cover, which is a black cover with baby and child on the front, which is a ribbon of color for those that are listening to the podcast. And in the shop, you can look at the whole deck, but also it's broken down into the 4 other decks. Here comes the wind. So what we have is those 4 decks have the opportunity of expanding. I'm just going to do a pause here for a moment. So with the 4 decks, they're broken down into 4 sections. And one is based on the spine, one is based on the fascia, the connection of the spine and the fascia. Some is with the joints, and then some goes into the energy around the field. So if you want to know a little bit more about how much expansion that card deck can take you in, you might be drawn to one deck, you might be drawn to all of them, but at least you have an opportunity to look at the descriptions of each there.
Awesome. And then there's also the Cape Breton Tea Company. And so that one also works with intentions. So how does that work with the teas?
So in the Cape Breton Tea Company, we have tea blends that are put together by how you could remember Cape Breton. So Summer Breeze, which we just had an exhibit of, as it whipped our papers away. But also we've got Marvelous Miss Maple, which brings in the flavors of the maple trees. So that's an intention, but intention for memory. And then we have a series that was created when we originally started the company in 2015. Natasha and I sat down at that time. She was my partner with the teas. And we looked at the essence of each herb and what that herb brings to us. So there's a quality that each herb has. If I was looking at dandelion as an example, dandelion helps to lift you up and bring a joy to the circumstances that you're encountering, which is really interesting when you think about dandelion, because a lot of people will think about it's a weed in my lawn. But when you start to think about the power that it has, that completely changes things. So when you're looking at the tea blends, you can look at the herbs that are included in the tea blend. They're put there because they help support one of the 5 elements from Chinese medicine. And the affirmations are included on the package. So we've got the essences of the herbs, we've got the affirmation, and there's an affirmation on every package. Doesn't matter what blend it is. And that's because we want to bring out the opportunity for you to use tea as a way to create conversation, to engage with people, to collaborate, have connection, and how you use the tea we've brought in with how you can pair it. Because tea, yes, you could sit down and have a tea party, but you're going to add cookies, you're going to add fruit, you're going to add cheese. So how could you pair it, and how can you really bring that essences of the herbs up and enjoy them? That's how intention can be set without doing too much work. For those people that maybe are a little bit worried about, they're not sure what they want to intend yet, or how they want to set a goal, the teas can provide that for you, and they can set you up, or the card deck can do it, because you can cut the deck, pull out an affirmation, and then reflect on it, and that can help you think about how you want to set your intentions.
And by pair it, you mean serving the tea with a food or something else?
Yeah. In the story section on the website, what we've done is we've spent some time taking the different kinds of foods that people will eat and pairing a tea with it. Normally we just go, oh, this is my favorite tea, or I'm going to drink this one stinging nettle because it's really good for, and we try to medicinally use it. And instead, what you want to do is go, what tea is going to go really nicely with the barbecue hamburgers tonight?
So just like someone would say, oh, I'm going to have a white wine with this kind of meat and a red wine with this kind of meat.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing. This time now we're non-alcoholic. We've got all these wonderful blends of tea, and we're going to match the kind of tea,
exactly,
the right flavors and nuances of tea with these different flavors of foods.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. And what can happen too that I don't think people realize, because they'll say, oh, it's a hot day, I'm going to grab a beer. And then they put it with a food that doesn't really blend with that. And what happens is the flavor's dull. And then the energy kind of drops with that. I guess that's the best way to say it. And when you pair it correctly, it's like this lift up that the herbs bring to you. And it's a lot of fun, because then you're starting to think about, how will I serve the fruit salad? What's a great tea blend that's going to go with it?
And they all look so pretty.
Yeah. And one of the things, talking about family gatherings, so Charlene and I are here today actually getting to do the podcast together in person.
Yes.
But the second was, we spent a whole afternoon just doing a photo shoot with the tea and pairing it and bringing up the colors, and we had a lot of fun because they're so beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then, so how can people take their first step towards intention? If they've listened to this and they're like, oh, sounds kind of fun,
What can I do?
Yeah, I want to do something different for me.
So you could start with bringing, not always the same phrase. Don't start your day with the same phrase every day, because once you set your intention and you activate it, it's done. You don't need to bring it back. So just starting to look at, what is it you want? Think about your roadmap. There's workshops that I provide for vision mapping. Gives you the opportunity to think about where you might want to go, because some people might not have done that. We have a leaf blower, if you can hear that right now, across the way, and that's part of the fun of being outdoors. So just take small steps. Keep an eye on my website under subscribe, and you'll see the blog post come up, and that'll give you some other ideas of things you can play with.
So what should we do to close today, movement-wise?
I think I would love to talk about how intention works within the body.
Okay.
So if we take a movement from Tai Chi, which is called hands turning, and hands turning has its power. So for those people listening on the podcast, I'm going to bring my hands up in front of me, and I've got my arm at a 90-degree angle, and it's forward from my body, so I can feel my shoulder blades kind of opening up. And we're just going to turn the hands back and forth. And we're turning forward and backward, forward and backward. So from a movement perspective, this is hands turning. But from an intention perspective, and what happens in the body, is this is actually reciprocals. So as I turn here's the wind again. As I turn my hands, the forearm can actually be my spine. And so if I set my intention on opening the spine, I may be able to feel how it's moving as I'm turning my hands. And my forearm could also be my shin, and my hands could be my feet. So I could take the top half of my body and link it to the bottom half of my body. And if I allow that relaxation to come in, I might be able to feel how everything changes. Now, if I didn't have the intention of feeling it, I might not notice. It still happens anyway. But I set my intention to being aware of what's happening. All right, you're starting to feel middle of the forearms getting a little tired?
A little bit.
Yeah. So usually when people have a little bit of tension, it starts to, right down the center of the forearm, starts to build up tension or heat up. It's usually, but it's hot out here today, so I don't know if we're going to notice any heat. And if you just want to bring your hands down, you could turn from the shoulder, and you could turn the palm back and forth, so you're rotating in your shoulder. And from a reciprocal point of view, that is the same as the hip being in the hip socket, the leg into the hip socket, and turning in there. And we could bring our awareness and intention to how we could open up the leg and the hip while we're turning the arms. And for a lot of people, when they're trying to solve a problem, they're trying to solve the problem. Sometimes if you come around it, you might be able to solve it in a slightly different way. And so when you go to a different body part and think about how it can affect a part maybe that doesn't move so well, you might actually have more mobility happen as a result of that. So I think we're going to be motored out today. Everybody's out in the yard, no matter what temperature it is, because I think it's like, it has to be at least 35 out here today. It was wonderful to do this together.
This was great. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, thank you so much for supporting me in the podcast and how we go forward. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So as we finish off this podcast, I just want to remind everyone that our focus for this season, season 3, is about the transformational process and what happens to people when they look for their authentic selves and they create magic in their day. Intention is such a big part of that. And I've spent a lot of time trying to bring that into the podcast and exploring it. Our season has several different releases across each week of a month. And so you'll see this part exploring some of the ideas that I work with daily in the front of the podcast in the first week. And then we have compassionate living that Charlene and I explore as she shares the Moyo family at the end of the month. In between are conversations with amazing experts in their field. And I hope that you'll come back and look for the different ideas and subjects that they have to offer. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Michelle Greenwell with Be Well with Michelle Greenwell podcast. Take care. And those, if you can hear it, are the sounds of summer.